Okay, I want to take a moment to go over the things that I've seen in this market. Some of them are hindsight, where it's something that I should have noticed. Some of them are things that I'm noticing right now, which is definitely affecting my decisions. Um, so first of all, I'm going to start off with discussing the Bitcoin top. This is a chart that I had a little while back, but it just didn't make sense to me because, again, I allowed myself to listen to the influencers. I allowed myself to listen to the people who really just have a feeling about what Bitcoin is going to do versus actually using technical analysis to allow the charts to tell you where the supports and resistances are. I think we spend a lot of time using TA on the lower time frames, but not as much on the higher time frames as we should. So here's an example of why initially I felt like that I knew where the Bitcoin top would be for this cycle. That's because if you're doing an ascending trend line, then if you start at the top of the 2017 bear market top, blow off top, or whatever, and you can actually get a touch point, and your next touch point will be the first all-time high of the 2021 bull market blow off top, which there are on-chain analytics that pretty much show that this was what was supposed to be the top. This is where most of the activity happened within Bitcoin. And then this drop happened. But market sentiment and retail and just different things that happen in the macroeconomic landscape was able to kind of push the price up again before it finally dropped down. But here, here, you have two touch points. Now, if you follow this ascending trend line, you'll see that your next set of touch points happen right here. And that's going to be in the range that we attempted to break one, two, three times before the drop. So, in following this ascending trend line, this was the range. And in order for Bitcoin to be able to reach an all-time high of the 200,000, 250,000 that people were saying, like this had to be broken with a good amount of volume and then retested before taking off. But it's the top of the channel, so it couldn't be broken. Now, another thing that I've had marked up and I've noticed, and again, I'm on a 3 day, sorry. This should be on the weekly. And the weekly will kind of tell the same story or whatever. I don't know why I was on a 3 day, but again, you'll see top, 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 top. Um, Now, as I expand this a bit, another thing that I had on here was I had the bottom half of the channel. Now, if you pay attention to the bottom half of the channel, this is going to be the start of, not necessarily the start. This is accumulation. This is an accumulation range. So Bitcoin range from 29 to around between 15 and 30. This was just a range. There was a lot of accumulation going on here. So you can basically say that this was the bottom of the bear market. And I am, let me see, what is it, the 50? Like, if I pull up the 50, you'll see that we broke below the 50, and all of this was accumulation at the bottom, and then the price even played around at the 50 for a while, which is more accumulation before it started to move up. So on the move up, let me close this. On the move up is where I was able to get the first touch point, and then of course we had like a little small dip right here, and this gives me the second touch point. So now I have an ascending trend line for what will be considered like the bottom of the range. Now, of course, we did this huge drop, but the one thing that I did notice, of course, we fell below the 50 moving average, which that has happened before, but falling below the 50 moving average doesn't always mean that the price is going to continue to go lower. So if I pull up the 50 right now and I give you an example, we can pull up the where is the COVID? So we can pull up the COVID crash of 2020, and you'll see that we traded above the 50 in that range, and then we got this drop, this COVID drop, and after the drop, we kind of traded sideways, and then we went back above the 50. So it's possible to get back above the 50 now. When you talk to some people, they'll tell you, well, that was in a bear market, so that really doesn't count. And it may or may not count. Just showing you that it is possible to break below the 50 and then break back above. But either way, and honoring this trend line, touch point, touch point. Now, if we go based on that, then you'll see that our candle for last week, it wicked below the trend line, but it closed above. And then the next candle is actually a green candle that is sitting on the trend line. So if I am going to honor the top of the trend line to say this is the resistance of a channel, then this is definitely the support of a channel. Now, with that being said, does that mean that I think Bitcoin will continue to go up? I really can't say whether or not Bitcoin will continue to go up back into this range anytime soon. But I can say that since we were able to hold this particular trend line, and now I have to kind of try to figure out what Bitcoin's next target is. And when I think about what Bitcoin's next target is, then I have to look for confluence. I have to look for a lot of activity within these levels. And the first thing that I see when it comes to a lot of activity within these levels is, of course, 100,000. Somewhere between 100 and 101,000. There's a lot of activity going on, and you can see right here during this year's bull market cycle, we break above the 100, which is also like it's a multiple of 100. So that's one of those resistances that are supports that you're going to have just based on what the number is. It's 100, but you'll see that we broke above it with a high amount of volume, and then it was a comeback and it was a retest right here. That's one. We bounced off the 100. We traded for a bit, came down, bounced off it, retest again. That's two. The bounce, we go up to 110 and then we come down. That's three. That's four. If you want to count this one, you can say that's five, but I'll say that's three and that's four. And again, that was enough. Bam, bam, bam. That was enough for it to take off. Now, on the way back down, when we crossed over the 50, you'll see there was a test here, 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 here. So there was 4 attempts to break below the 100, which means that this was supporting. This was decent support before we go up again, and then we try to come down. Now, if you look and you pay attention to these two candles, like they are high volume. This was high volume selling to break through this support and basically turn it into resistance. So once we broke through the support and we came down and we tested what will be the bottom part of the trend line. If we are going to do a reversal, I feel like that Bitcoin is probably going to reverse in over the next like few weeks, a couple of weeks or whatever. we will, we should basically trade back up or retrace back up to this 100,000 area. Now, the 100,000 area is probably going to cause a lot of euphoria, and people are going to be like, oh, that was a correction, that was a pullback. Bitcoin is going to take off. And with that being said, you may have a lot of people jumping in because they're going to feel like at 100,000, especially if the news cooperates with spreading the word. They feel like at 100,000, if they can get to 200,000, then they'll be able to double their money. So you'll probably get a lot of people who will jump in. I feel like that if we are in a bear market, this is going to be a break, retest before it falls back down. Now, how far to fall, I don't know, but if it does fall below this channel, then that means we're definitely going into a bear market. So now, the other thing that I want to discuss is altcoins. And the thing with altcoins is usually we'll normally have an alt season. Now, when it comes to the alt season, we all know that alt season is when the altcoins usually take off, or they pretty much outperform Bitcoin. And in them outperforming Bitcoin, and I'll pull this over here, in them outperforming Bitcoin, then you should see the percentage of Bitcoin actually going down, and the percentage of Bitcoin, and we'll put this on a daily, or we can even put it on a weekly. The percentage of Bitcoin going down is, sorry, I don't lost my chart. The percentage of Bitcoin going down is what'll let you know that we are in an alt season. So I accidentally clicked this. So I'm gonna go back and click this. Okay. So the percentage of Bitcoin going down is what lets you know that we're in an alt season, because as the percentage goes down, that means that there are fewer people in Bitcoin. And when there are fewer people in Bitcoin in the crypto space, it's either they're moving their money out of Bitcoin and they're putting it into other altcoins. But with the new rise of stable coins, you'll more than likely have a lot of people that are pulling out of Bitcoin and actually going into stable coins. So the alt season, or the whole idea of the alt season, could be kind of like flawed. It could be different this time around, only because now money that's flowing out of Bitcoin is not going into the other projects, especially if we're headed to a bear market. It's going into stable coins, and then it going into stable coins. I'm not 100% certain that going into stable coins is going to cause any project to rise just because they're increasing stable coins. Like, if all of this money goes into USDC or Tether, I don't think that will be enough to make like Ethereum take off. It would definitely cause a lot of activity to happen on the chain, but being that the money isn't going into Ethereum directly, I'm not sure if that indirect effect will cause the price to rise. But now we're going to go back to Bitcoin, and I'm going back to Bitcoin because I want to kind of show you a comparison. Now, with Bitcoin, if you pay attention to a lot of the influencers and a lot of technical analysts, they compare Bitcoin to the S&P 500. And only because Bitcoin is one of those large, like you could say technology companies. I wouldn't necessarily call it company, but it's a large technology asset, comparable to a Nvidia, comparable to a Microsoft, some of just like the larger companies. So in all of this being charted literally the same way, because like I said in some of my other like sessions or videos, like this, what we're looking at now is just a bunch of different patterns playing out. All of this is not buying and selling. Like, some of it is influenced by buying and selling, but a lot of it is different patterns playing off. That's why if you learn certain patterns like the Elliott wave pattern or the Gann pattern or Wyckoff accumulation and distribution, you'll be able to like notice these things and kind of like pick these things out to figure out like what's going on. But in that, it's not just with crypto. It happens also with stocks. It happens also with Forex or whatever. It's just a lot of patterns that are playing out. So in this case, Bitcoin somewhat follows the S&P 500. So you can literally look at what the S&P or what the stock market is doing, and paying attention to what the stock market is doing, you can get an idea of what Bitcoin is doing. So like if Bitcoin is dropping right now, it's a possibility that the stock market is dropping. I don't think I have the S&P 500 on here, but I'll find it and I'll take a look at it. But I do believe that stock market is more than likely dropping as well. Now, the reason why I mention that is because Bitcoin follows the S&P 500. Actually, altcoins follow what is called the Russell 2000. And what the Russell 2000 is the Russell, that's 2,000 of your more mid-cap companies, index of 2,000 of your more mid-cap companies. And altcoins kind of fall within that space of like those mid-cap companies. So usually when the Russell 2000 kind of breaks its all-time high, then that means that altcoins will kind of be taken off as well. So like I'm going to give you an example. So let's say right here, my green line is this. The all-time high for the Russell 2000 back in 2018 was 1749. So we'll see that price played around, came up, and then dropped and came back up. So in November of 2020, we had a break above, and then November the 16th of 2020, you had basically the Russell takeoff. So we're going to look at November the 16th of 2020 on Ethereum on a weekly, and I'm just curious about what happened. So if we look at Ethereum, November 16th of 2020, and let me get a vertical line. So if we go November 16th of 2020, and I'll do this in green. I like green. On November 16th of 2020, and I'll go back and show you. This is where the Russell 2000 broke its previous all-time high and actually started to take off and set a new all-time high. So if we go back and we look at Ethereum and we see what happened November the 16th of 2020, you'll see also that this is when Ethereum actually started to take off and go towards its all-time high. Now the reason that I'm showing you that is because this year, and this is the new all-time high for the Russell. Now this year we had a couple of times where the Russell attempted to break the all-time high. So the first one was November the 18th of 2024. So if we go back and look at Ethereum, and I'm just curious, and we go November, I wonder why one says 18th and the other says the 20th. But we go November 20th, and we go to the Russell, and like I said, the attempt to break actually started November 18th. I don't know why. I'm on the weekly, so I don't know why the numbers are off. But we'll say November 18th is when the attempt was tried. You'll see that here started November 18th. Sorry. This is 2023. So we're actually going to go November 18th. (2024). You see that when you go to the Russell, November 18th, 2024, like there was an attempt to break, and there was a little peak above, before it finally started back to drop, and that was December's 9th, and then 16th was the big drop. So if we go back to Ethereum and we look and see what happened December 9th was a pullback, and then December, I don't know what this says, but let me get rid of it. And December 16th was the big drop. So it kind of correlates with the Russell. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is because the break of the Russell 2000 is also an indicator of an alt season or just an increase in price of altcoins. Now, if we go to October the 20th, where we really got a clean break above, and we go to Ethereum, now I'm wondering what happened on October 20th. So we're October 20th right here, and I say we got a clean break, but we were already like, so from September the 29th up until October 20th, we were trying to break resistance. So if I go to September 9th, which it won't let me, it'll, I guess here's September 8th. Like all of this kind of leading up, and a lot of this also was the Bitcoin dominance dropping. But you'll see that once it failed, or the break actually failed. Now these attempts to break above or whatever were, they just kept trying, but it couldn't before it finally fell on October 20th, or actually October the 27th. So if we go here, and we'll see we got a break above, but October 27th was the start of the fall. Now, here within this last week, and this is something that I'm really paying attention to, is we have another potential break. There's a test to attempt to break the Russell. Attempt to break the Russell 2000. Now, if we can get a strong break similar to the break that we seen here, where break and take off. If we can get a strong enough break and take off, then even though Bitcoin may be like lagging, and Bitcoin may kind of like play around in this area until it finally breaks, like within this range where we have the back and forth of the attempt to try to break the 100, we could actually get an alt season, or we can definitely more than likely get a takeoff in altcoins, because we haven't really seen an alt season yet. We've seen, let me see, this is total, and this is total Bitcoin dominance. Let's see. If we look at the total 2, so total 2 is going to be the market cap excluding Bitcoin. I don't know why I split it like that for me, but I need to get the full screen, so I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to try this again. So if we look at total 2, and total 2 is really just the market, and we're going to go weekly. This is the altcoin market, not including Bitcoin, excluding Bitcoin. So if we look at the altcoin market, excluding Bitcoin, if you just really pay attention to it, I won't necessarily say we've been ranging, but I would say that since 2013, let me measure this, since 2013 up until here, like we had a 241% increase. Now 241% over the entire market seems cool, but if you compare it to the increase that we saw in 2020, you're looking at a 3,900, maybe a 4,000% increase. So this is what an alt season looks like. What we have here what we have here is probably just a larger version of, and I'll put it on the daily. Um, so what we've had here is, if we go to seems to me just like a larger version of something like this, where you got one, two, you can call this three, come down before we get like a larger push. If we pay attention to this over here, it just seems the same way. One, two, three, where it's a larger, seems like a larger push. So I can't necessarily say that the Bitcoin bull market cycle will resume, because it has broken the 50, and 100,000 is a very strong resistance now. But I do know that usually whenever Bitcoin consolidates, that means trades sideways or trades in a range, or whenever Bitcoin is going down. Sorry, whenever Bitcoin consolidates, or whenever Bitcoin is going up in price, but at the same time your Bitcoin dominance is going down, then that means your alt season, you're getting ready for an alt season. And the other thing is, whenever your Russell breaks out and sets a new all-time high, then that's also an indicator of an alt season. Just because Russell breaking out and setting a new all-time high means that all of the 2,000 companies within the Russell index, they're all increasing. They're all increasing in value. Well, not all of them, but the majority of them are increasing in value and pulling up just the entire value of the index. So it's not one, two, or three of these companies. Like, it's the majority of the companies that are pulling the index up. And if altcoins are mimicking what the Russell 2000 shows, then that would mean that a lot of altcoins will pull up the altcoins, and not just one or two coins here and there. Like, the majority of them will work together, at least the ones with the higher market caps, to pull up like the entire altcoin market. So I'm definitely paying attention to the Russell. And now we have a new all-time high, which is this right here. So with that being a new all-time high, let me make this red, I will be looking to see in this right here, even though this is like a resistance zone, I'm looking to see if the Russell 2000 can break this, as well as break the previous all-time high and continue up. If the Russell can do that, then, and the Bitcoin dominance continues to go down, then we should see an alt season. And a lot of us are in altcoins, so that will definitely be what we're looking for. And then the same thing will apply to the XRPs and the Solanas and the Doges and the Cardanos. Like, once the Russell breaks, then everything should really take off. But right now, when we look at Bitcoin dominance on the weekly, we'll see that it's actually going down. So it's saying that the Bitcoin dominance is going down as long as Bitcoin can stay above this trend line, but actually range between this 86 or this 85 and 100K. If we can range here, Bitcoin dominance goes down and we get a break of the all-time high, a breaking continuation of the Russell 2000, we definitely should be seeing an alt season. And even when I kind of pull out Ethereum a little bit, And of course, sometimes I use the adaptive trend finder, and sometimes I just set up my own trend lines. Like I set up my own ascending trend line here, just because the adaptive trend finder didn't find the touch points. Like it's right here, and I guess it gives it a little buffer because of this break below. But if I just stick with the touch points, every touch point, you'll see that even with the Ethereum drop, it dropped all the way down to the bottom of the channel before retracing and coming back up. And now it's printing a green candle. We still have the 50 below the 20. And even though they are kind of like curving down, like they're still in a position to where, as you can see right here, here was an instance where the 50 was actually curving down and the 20 was curving down, and it still like basically started curving back up and caused the price to like continue up. So this doesn't say too much about the altcoin market dropping. Like this could easily curve and start to go back up. And as we can see, the top of this channel, the top of this channel is within the $6,000 range, and anybody who's been paying attention will know that we did not, or did we? We broke the all-time high, but we didn't really break the all-time high when it comes to Ethereum. Other projects, especially like Bitcoin broke its all-time high of 68,000 and it went up to 126,000. So for Ethereum to break its all-time high of 48,000, only to go up 49,000, that leaves a lot to be desired, especially since this is number two, the number two coin in the crypto space. So if we do the same thing for this coin that we did with Bitcoin, then you will see that touch point to touch point, and let me see, turn the 50 and the 20 off, and I can get rid of these. You will see that we're nowhere, like we're at the bottom of the range here, but the top of the range, to say that we've reached the top, we're nowhere near the top of the range to say that we reached the top. Now, I don't know how long this will stretch, and I don't know if like we just don't have the buying power to get the price to push up this high. But I do know, just if I apply the same ascending trend line that I applied to Bitcoin to Ethereum, then we should get a bounce here. And if there is not anything that's really preventing this from taking off, then this thing should run up. This thing should run into 9,000, like $10,000 range, which was being predicted based on TA. But we'll see. These are just my thoughts about the direction of the market that I feel like that we're headed. Like I said, they're thoughts, so we'll see how they play out. And let's see, we'll kind of go from there. And just in playing around with this, let me see, all-time high. And that's another thing, like you always got to pay attention to your historical data. And then paying attention to your historical data, even here when Bitcoin broke below this trend line in February and March, like people wondering, hey, how far down can Bitcoin go? Well, there was a lot of different levels of potential support. There were ranges, and I'll show you a range. So the first range would have been down here in this area, and that's not necessarily the first range. the first range, and I want this to be, I'm sorry, I gotta keep moving this tool around. I want this to be green and this to be green. So the first range would have been this line right here, and this line right here, you'll see if you go back far enough historically, this was the top of the 20, you could say 2018. And keep in mind that the Ethereum top hit in January. The Ethereum top hit in January in 2027, and the Ethereum topped out in like November of 2021. So around the same time as Bitcoin, but it's still, yeah, around the same time as Bitcoin. So you have a top that happened in January, and then you had a top that happened in November or whatever. So you have that middle range where you can still have something that can take off within December to the January time frame, probably even February. It just depends on whether or not we get an alt season. And like I said, that depends on what Bitcoin does, what the Bitcoin dominance does, and what the Russell 2000 does. But yeah, going back to like those resistance areas, you have this resistance area, and if I can get this a little bit thicker, let's see. Yeah. So yeah, in these two areas right here, you have maximum resistance. So even though you broke out of the trend line, you definitely tested the support, which was the previous all-time high, before bouncing back into this area. And this is like what I call a V-shaped recovery. And then also, this is similar to what happened with COVID. With the COVID crash, we broke below, but then V-shaped recovery, like we came right back up into the range to continue to go. So in this instance, we didn't have that. We are actually testing this ascending trend line before it looks like we're getting green candles. So, and this is the weekly. We'll see like in a few more weeks what happens. So by Christmas time, we'll get a better look the story. So I'd say that'll be four additional candles. Now if those four additional candles, if any of those candles are remaining above this area, even if they're kind of like going sideways slowly, then that just means that we're slowly going in an uptrend. And it's very possible that even though Bitcoin may be going into a bear, it's possible that Ethereum and some of the other stronger alts don't bleed as much against Bitcoin, just because our all-time low is like 1,000, and the last like drop had us down at 14. I don't see Ethereum breaking anywhere below 1,000. I don't really see it visiting 1,000 again, because this was the low of the previous bear market cycle, around 1,900, 800. Like it got pretty low. Yeah, it got down to 800. I don't see that happening again from where it is. So if anything, maybe a 14 before a bounce and take back off. But if we break below 800 and we go down to like lower ranges, then that's bad for crypto, very bad for crypto, because Ethereum is the number two most accumulated project, and a lot of other projects sit on top of Ethereum, and they function because of Ethereum. So as I said a few other times in the past, Ethereum cannot fail. Like Bitcoin is Bitcoin, and it's good for what it does, but Ethereum is the backbone of crypto. It's the backbone of just about every other coin outside of Bitcoin. So unless we're just going to be in a situation where Bitcoin is the only coin and everybody is just loading into Bitcoin, which would definitely appreciate the price. Like Ethereum has to pretty much remain number two because everything is running on Ethereum and more projects are getting built on Ethereum. And that's just because it's a blockchain that has 100% uptime, that hasn't had any issues over the years ever since it was forked. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I'm gonna keep my eye on this. We definitely still have an opportunity to make money in the long run. It's just more of really paying attention to what the charts are telling us. I'm paying attention to the bounce. I'm paying attention to what's going on here. I want to see how this weekly chart plays out. If we get a little pump into like the end of the week and we can get 3,000 and break over 3,000, I can see Ethereum like starting basically to head back up. Now, if you pay attention to this, you'll see that we actually got, I would say this is, I can't necessarily say this is a higher high because if it is, it's barely a higher high. But it's like we got a higher high, we got a higher low, we got a higher high, and even though we got a lower low, we got another higher high. So we have the opportunity to still build up off of this as long as Ethereum can basically turn and come back around and start going back up without breaking this level here. Then we'll have a higher high, lower low, higher high, lower low, and we can basically do like a stair step. So those are my thoughts. This video actually lasted a lot longer than I thought it would, so I'm going to come to an end, but hopefully I was able to provide enough information to give you a little bit more clarity about what's going on in the market. Peace.